My name's Tom. I'm 48. I've spent most of my adult life under the same flickering ceiling lights at the auto plant in Kansas. Wrench in hand, jaw tight, clocking in and out like the rest of the worn-down men trying to hold the line against time. 29 years of torque and steel. My spine tells the story better than any resume. I know how to work. I know how to suffer. What I didn't know, what no one ever warned me about, was how deeply it would hurt to give everything to a family that never wanted you in the first place. 7 years ago, I married Heather. She was soft-spoken, the kind of woman who folds her grief into laundry and never lets it wrinkle the house. We met at a church potluck. She was standing by the window with a plastic cup of sweet tea, alone but not lonely. Something about her made me want to build something again. She came with 3 kids, Cody, Jade, and Riley, and a quiet warning. Their father's not really in the picture. Greg, their dad, lived out in California. The man had charm, no doubt. Smiled like a politician, surfboard in one hand, empty promises in the other. He'd call once every few months, drop into town twice a year if that. But every time he appeared, the kids would light up like someone had flipped on a switch I could never reach. He was the ghost they kept a seat open for, even at tables I built. But I didn't flinch. I came in willing. Hell, I came in grateful. I told myself this was a second chance. Maybe not to raise kids of my own, but to show up for someone else's. And that had to count for something, right? I moved into their house, Heather's house, really. It was small, cluttered, still full of Greg's leftovers. Tools rusted in the garage, old photos jammed in drawers, a sports jersey pinned to the basement wall like a shrine. I didn't ask her to throw anything away. I just started fixing what was broken, one doorknob at a time. I tore down a wall to give each kid their own room. Cody wanted black walls, red trim. Looked like a crime scene when I finished it, but he smiled once. Just once. Jade chose lavender and stenciled vines. Riley was the youngest. He didn't care much, just wanted space to hang his astronaut posters. I built their beds, patched the roof, retiled the bathroom, rewired the breaker box after a short nearly set the kitchen on fire. I never asked for anything in return. Not even a thank you. I paid for everything. Field trips, braces, shoes, laptops, the works. When Riley needed emergency dental work, I drove him to 3 clinics across county lines. When Jade's car broke down in the middle of a snowstorm, I left work early, crawled under it with frostbitten fingers, and got it running with nothing but a borrowed wrench and some blind faith. I was the one up at dawn on Christmas morning, assembling toys I didn't even recognize. I was the one writing checks to the university when Cody got into KU. I told myself this was what love looked like. Effort without expectation. I didn't want to replace Greg. I just wanted them to see me. Really see me. But they never did. It didn't happen all at once. Rejection has a slow, patient crawl. Starts quiet, like a crack in drywall. Easy to ignore. Then it spreads, splinters, turns structural before you even notice the weight shifting. Cody was the first to turn cold. He stopped using my name. Just called me him or the guy. Once, I walked in on him telling his friend, "No, that's not my real dad. Just the dude my mom married." I stood there, grocery bags in hand, frozen in the hallway like I'd walked in on a funeral I wasn't invited to. Jade was subtler. She withdrew. She stopped asking for help. She'd struggle with something, car trouble, class schedules, even choosing a major, and she'd ask her mother, ask her friends, hell, even post it on Facebook before she'd ask me. I offered once. She flinched like I'd raised a hand. Riley was quiet, polite in the way strangers are polite. Always a thank you, always a yes sir. But he looked through me, like he was waiting for something, someone, to come back and take my place. I tried to connect with him over music, movies, space, anything. He nodded, listened, then went right back to texting Greg when he popped up like a magician every 3rd weekend. Heather never corrected them. Not once. She saw it all. The rolled eyes, the cold shoulders, the skipped Father's Day cards, the invisible wounds that never bled enough to make her speak up. Her silence was the deepest betrayal of all. She'd just say, "They're still adjusting." Or worse, teenagers, you know? No, Heather. I didn't know, because I didn't raise them from birth. I wasn't there for their first steps or first words. But I was here now. I was here for the hard years, the broke years, the anxious nights. I was here when Greg wasn't. And still, I wasn't family. I was financing their denial. But I kept going. I told myself respect takes time. I told myself they'd come around. That one day, maybe Cody would pull me aside and say, "Hey, thanks for showing up." That maybe Jade would ask me for help with a big decision. That maybe Riley would want to do something just the two of us. Years passed. Nothing changed. Every holiday, Greg would send a gift with his name scrawled in Sharpie. Some shiny piece of guilt. A tablet, a bracelet, some concert tickets, and they'd beam like they'd seen God. Meanwhile, I was the one who bought the wrapping paper, paid the postage when he forgot to sign the damn card, cleaned up the mess after they tore through the gifts like wolves. One summer, Cody got in a fight at school. Suspended for a week. Greg didn't call. I sat with Cody on the porch trying to talk him through it. He said, "You don't get it. You're not a real dad. You don't understand." I just nodded. Didn't say a word. But something cracked that day. Something deep. I was always the one paying. When Riley needed a new laptop, I bought it. When Jade needed a deposit for her apartment, I wired it. When Cody's tuition was short, I took on extra hours at the shop. They never asked Greg. They never expected anything from him. And somehow that made him sacred. He got to be the ideal because he never showed up long enough to disappoint them. Me? I was always there. And that made me disposable. I started to feel it in my bones. The weight of being needed but never wanted. The grind of giving without grace. I'd come home from a 12-hour shift and be met with silence. Not anger, just indifference. That cuts deeper. There was a night. I'll never forget it. When I came home soaked to the skin after fixing a busted water main in the yard. I walked in, mud to my knees, back aching. The kids were all in the living room watching some show. I asked if someone could help me get out of my boots. Cody didn't even look up. Jade sighed like I was interrupting something important. Riley stared at his phone. Heather said nothing. That night I sat alone in the garage. Lights off. Just the soft creak of the rafters and the ticking of the water heater. I stared at the wall, trying to remember the last time someone in that house said they appreciated me. Couldn't. I was bleeding into a family that treated me like wallpaper. Always there. Never noticed. But I kept showing up. Because that's what men like me do. We show up. We fix things. We work. We give. We tell ourselves that maybe, just maybe, one more sacrifice will earn us a place at the table. Even when we know the chairs are already taken. When Cody announced he was getting married, I thought, finally, this was the moment things would turn. Maybe gratitude would sneak its way in through ceremony. Maybe all the years of paying, fixing, forgiving would mean something when he stood in front of everyone and said thank you. Not in words, maybe, but in the way he looked at me. I told Heather I wanted to help. Not out of pride. Out of duty. I wanted to see it through. "I'll cover the venue," I said. "Catering, photos, flowers. Whatever he needs." Heather looked relieved, maybe even proud. "He'll appreciate that, Tom." But Cody didn't look at me when I told him. He just said, "If there's room, you can sit in the back." That sentence split something open inside me. It didn't sound angry. It sounded factual. I was a guest at best. Not family. Not father. Just a man who'd been convenient. I nodded, pretended not to bleed. But that night, when the house went quiet and Heather was asleep, I went to the garage. I turned on the small lamp by the workbench and opened the filing cabinet where I keep everything. Tax returns, invoices, college payments, loan transfers. 7 years of numbers staring back like ghosts in neat rows. Every month, a sacrifice. $340 for Jade's textbooks. $900 for Riley's braces. $12,000 for Cody's tuition. And it didn't stop there. Car repairs, groceries, rent when Heather lost hours at the clinic. It wasn't just money. It was time. It was blood. And in total, the blood came to $281,476. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I realized what it meant. I'd spent nearly $300,000 trying to buy belonging from people who saw me as an ATM. I went to bed with that number in my head and woke up knowing what I had to do. The next morning, I made calls. Venue, canceled. Florist, refunded. Photographer, gone. Catering, decorations, deposits, all reversed. Anything that bore my name, my money, my labor, erased. Heather found out first. She stormed into the kitchen with her phone in hand, face pale with panic. "What did you do?" "I stopped paying," I said. "You can't just pull out, Tom. This is Cody's wedding." "No," I said quietly. "This is Greg's son's wedding. Let Greg pay for it." She stared at me, mouth open, searching for some trace of the man who used to say yes to everything. But that man was gone. He'd been replaced by someone who'd finally looked at the ledger and found nothing left to give. Within hours, the calls began. Cody first. "What the hell, Tom? They're saying everything's canceled. What kind of stunt are you pulling?" I said, "Not a stunt. A correction." "What does that even mean?" "It means I've been living a lie, and I'm done financing it." He went silent for a second, then hissed, "You're unbelievable. After everything we planned, you just bail?" I almost laughed. "We planned? There was never a we. There was only me, the silent investor in their story." "Ask your father to help," I said, and hung up. Then came Jade. "Mom's crying," she said. "You're breaking her heart." "No," I said. "I'm just refusing to break mine again." By the afternoon, Heather's sister called, then her mother, then someone from Greg's family. People who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly found my number. Every one of them said the same thing: "You're ruining everything." I didn't argue, because they were right. I was ruining the illusion, the one that said I belonged here. Heather avoided me that night. I could hear her upstairs, talking to Cody on speaker, trying to patch together what money couldn't. Her voice cracked when she said, "He's not himself." But the truth was, I had never been more myself. I was finally standing where I should have stood all along, outside their circle, watching the truth unfold without flinching. 2 days later, the fallout hit full force. Cody sent me a message: "You're dead to me." Jade blocked my number. Riley sent one line that almost made me laugh. "Why are you doing this?" As if I hadn't already done everything. Heather tried once more. She sat at the table with her hands clasped like a woman praying to a god who'd stopped listening. "Tom, please, don't let this be how it ends. They're young, they don't mean it." I stared at her. "They've meant it for years. You just didn't want to hear it." She looked down, tears smudging her mascara, but I didn't move. I'd wept enough for that family. My tears had bought them heat in winter, tuition in fall, comfort in every season. I owed them nothing now. Cody's wedding happened anyway, in a church basement an hour outside town. No chandeliers, no photographer, no speeches, sandwiches, soda cans, Bluetooth speakers cutting out between songs. I wasn't there. I didn't need to see it. The image was enough. Greg in the front row, pretending to belong, pretending to provide, while I sat in my garage wiping grease off my hands, finally feeling clean. The peace that follows destruction. People think peace is soft, like forgiveness. It's not. It's sharp. It's the quiet that comes after you've burned everything down and realize you don't miss the smoke. I went back to work the next Monday. The plant felt different, lighter. For the first time in years, my paycheck was mine. I bought myself a new set of tools. I started saving. Not for college funds. Not for weddings. For me. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Heather moved through the house like a ghost. We still spoke sometimes, but every word was brittle. She never apologized. Not once. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe admitting the truth that she'd let them treat me like furniture would have broken her too. A week after the wedding, Cody's new wife sent me a photo. The message said, "You should have been there." I stared at it for a long time. Cody was smiling, standing next to Greg, the man who'd vanished for years and reappeared just in time for the camera. I deleted the photo and went outside. The sun was setting behind the garage, light hitting the steel shelves just right, dust floating in gold lines. I stood there for a while, hands deep in my pockets, breathing in the smell of oil and iron. It hit me then. This was all I ever needed. Silence. Space. Ownership of my own time. People will call it cruel. They'll say I should have swallowed the insult, stayed for the sake of family. But family isn't about shared walls. It's about shared respect. And when respect dies, family becomes a debt you keep paying long after the love is gone. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd written checks for their futures. I poured a glass of whiskey and looked around the quiet house. The walls didn't feel heavy anymore. They felt honest. Empty but honest. I thought about Cody's words again. If there's room, you can sit in the back. He didn't know it, but that sentence freed me. I'd spent 7 years trying to sit at the front of a table that was never mine. Now I didn't need a seat at all. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove to a cheap motel off the highway. Heather called once. I let it ring. She left a message that said, "You can't just walk away from family." But I wasn't walking away. I was walking home to myself. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Cody again. I thought he'd keep his distance, let silence do the talking. But pride bends fast when the money dries up. He showed up at the garage one afternoon, sun in his eyes, jaw tight. He looked smaller than I remembered, worn down by the kind of life that doesn't have anyone underwriting it. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," he said. I wiped my hands on a rag. "You didn't think I was a person. You thought I was a credit card." His mouth twitched, somewhere between a smirk and a plea. "You could have talked to me first. You didn't have to humiliate everyone." "I didn't humiliate anyone," I said. "I just stopped paying to be ignored." He shook his head, glancing at the half-finished engine beside us. "You really think this fixes anything? You think Mom's gonna forgive you for this?" "Forgive me," I said. "For what? Stopping the bleeding?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the concrete floor, the way people do when the truth lands too hard. Then he turned, muttering something about how I'd ruined everything, and left. The sound of his truck pulling away was softer than I expected. Almost gentle, like the end of a long, bad song. That night, Jade texted. Short, sharp lines of anger. "You broke Mom's heart. You're cruel. Then you'll regret this." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. The next day, Riley came by. He stood at the doorway, eyes down, shoulders slumped. He looked more like a child than the young man he was becoming. "Mom says you won't pay for school anymore," he said quietly. "That's right." He nodded, swallowing hard. "College is expensive. I don't know how I'm gonna." "You'll figure it out," I said. "Or your dad will." He winced. "He won't. He barely calls me back." I looked at him then, really looked. "You all wanted your real dad. Well, now you've got him. Go to him. You can't spit in my face and expect me to feed you afterward." He said nothing, just stood there, trembling like a boy lost in a storm. Then he turned and left, closing the door without a sound. The house was quieter after that, quieter than I ever thought it could be. Even Heather's footsteps seemed hesitant, softer, like she was afraid of what the silence might reveal. We passed each other like ghosts, shared space, no warmth. Her eyes were rimmed red, but she never said the words I knew were burning inside her. "You chose yourself," because she knew I'd finally done what she never could. Stopped pretending. A few nights later, she came into the living room. I was sitting there with a cup of coffee gone cold, the television dark. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You're really walking away, aren't you?" she said. "I already have," I replied. "After everything you've done for them." "For me?" I nodded slowly. "That's the problem, Heather. I did everything. You all just watched." She looked down, twisting her wedding ring. "You're punishing them." "No," I said. "I'm freeing myself." Her eyes filled, but she didn't argue. Maybe she finally understood that what I'd been asking for wasn't love. It was respect, and that she'd let it die by silence. A week later, I moved out, found a small apartment above a tire shop near the edge of town. 2 rooms, a sink that dripped, windows that rattled in the wind. But it was mine. The first night there, I slept on the floor with a rolled-up jacket for a pillow. The hum of the highway outside was the sweetest lullaby I'd heard in years. Freedom doesn't always sound peaceful. It just sounds honest. I left Heather the house. Left the furniture, the tools, the life. Took only what I'd brought into it. A few boxes, my clothes, and a drawer full of unpaid gratitude. I didn't leave a note. She already knew every word I could have written. Days passed, then weeks. I settled into the rhythm of solitude. Work, dinner, silence. I fixed engines by day and watched the sunset bleed over the parking lot by night. No shouting, no cold shoulders, no quiet contempt echoing through the walls. Just quiet, real quiet. Then came the knock. It was late, maybe close to midnight. When I opened the door, Heather was standing there. Hair messy, eyes swollen. She looked like a woman who'd been living inside an apology too big to speak. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "You have a house," I replied. "You have them. They're gone," she whispered. "Riley moved in with Greg. Jade barely talks to me. Cody and his wife, they don't visit. Not since." She stopped herself, as if saying it out loud might make it more real. "Not since I left?" I asked. She nodded. I stepped aside, let her in. She walked around the small apartment, taking in the bare walls, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. "This is how you live now. This is how I breathe now," I said. She turned, eyes wet. "I never wanted it to go this way. But you let it," I said. "You let them make me invisible. You let Greg's ghost sit at the table while I stood at the sink washing dishes." She started crying then, quiet, broken sobs. "I thought if I kept the peace, they'd come around. I thought they'd see what you did for them." "They did see," I said. "They just didn't care." She looked at me, searching for something. Mercy, maybe, or the version of me that used to patch over her mistakes. But that man was gone. I couldn't resurrect him even if I wanted to. "What do we do now?" she asked softly. "You start over," I said. "Just like I did. But without me." She stared for a long moment, then nodded, understanding that forgiveness wasn't coming. She left without another word. When the door closed, I sat down at the table and stared at the empty chair across from me. For years, I dreamed of silence as peace. But now, sitting in it, I realized silence is only peace when it's earned. And I had finally earned mine. The next morning, I got a text from Riley. I didn't mean what I said. I was just scared. I typed out a reply, then deleted it. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them feel the cost of what they've taken for granted. That weekend, I drove past the old house. The grass was high. The blinds were drawn. It didn't look like a home anymore, just a shell. Funny how quickly a place turns cold once love stops paying the bills. I didn't stop, just kept driving. The road ahead was empty, wide, forgiving. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to prove my worth to people who measured value in dollars and silence. And I wondered why it took me this long to understand. You can't buy belonging. You can't purchase respect. You can't earn love by carrying other people's indifference. When I reached the outskirts of town, I pulled over at a gas station and watched the sun go down behind the grain silos. The light stretched long and thin across the asphalt. For the first time, I didn't feel bitter. I just felt done. I whispered, maybe to the wind, maybe to myself. They wanted their real father. Now they have him. And I finally have me. They call it cruel. That's the word people use when the story circles back around. The coworkers who heard whispers. The neighbors who saw the moving truck. The distant relatives who send messages wrapped in judgment. How could you do that to those kids? They weren't kids anymore. They were grown enough to make declarations. Grown enough to weaponize blood. Grown enough to tell me what I was not. Then turn around and hold their hands out when the tuition bills arrived. So let me ask you something. Is it cruel to stop lighting yourself on fire to keep others warm? Because that's what I'd been doing. Every damn day. Burning myself down to embers so someone else could stand in the glow and call it theirs. And when I finally stepped out of the flames, they screamed about the cold like I'd stolen the sun. But I didn't take anything. I just stopped giving it. They wanted Greg. They wanted the man who came bearing gifts twice a year and disappeared before the dishwasher needed emptying. They wanted the father whose only proof of love was a last name and a vacation photo. I was just the man behind the curtain, pulling levers, making sure everything ran. And when the show ended, no one clapped for me. They'll never say it outright, but I was never supposed to be permanent. I was the stand-in, the backup generator, the insurance policy, the man who worked when their real dad played. You know what nobody ever tells you? Being present isn't enough. You can wake them up for school, fix the leak in the roof, drive them to the emergency room, and still not exist in the story they tell other people. You can bleed every paycheck into their futures and they'll still call you a stranger when they're angry. One bad moment, one sentence at dinner, and suddenly you're not my real dad. Like the past never happened. Like love has to be biologically notarized to be real. That's the weight of being a stepfather in a house that never stopped mourning a man who wasn't even dead. I used to sit in the kitchen after they all went to bed, hands calloused, body sore, wondering if maybe tomorrow would be the day they saw me. Really saw me. Not as the guy who paid the bills, not as the man who fixed the car, but as someone who showed up when no one else did. As someone who chose them, but they never did. And Heather, she watched it all. Year after year. Birthday after birthday. Silent. That's what broke me more than anything. Not their words. Not Cody's cold shoulder or Jade's distant eyes or Riley's rehearsed indifference. It was Heather's silence. Her refusal to demand they respect the man keeping the lights on. Her inability to draw a line between being a mother and being a wife. In the end, I realized she didn't want a partner. She wanted a provider. A man who could shoulder the cost of 3 children while she stood in the corner pretending to referee. She thought love meant endurance. That if I was strong enough, I'd stay no matter what. But strength isn't the same as servitude. You can only swallow so much before the taste of your own erasure becomes unbearable. I think about the dinner table sometimes. All those nights I grilled steaks, set the plates, poured drinks. The kids laughing with each other while I sat at the end like a hired hand. Invisible, necessary, but uninvited to the heart of the thing. That table was a stage, and I was the man moving the props. One night, I remember clearing the plates. Cody had just left to meet his fiancée. Jade was upstairs, Riley watching TV. Heather sat at the table scrolling her phone. I stood at the sink, hands in hot water, and said, "Sometimes I feel like a ghost in this house." She didn't even look up. "You're tired," she said. "It's been a long week." No, Heather. It had been a long marriage. I remember thinking, this is how men disappear. Not all at once. Not in a rage. But quietly, slowly, while no one notices. So I stopped waiting to be seen. I stepped away. And when I did, the collapse was immediate. Financial, emotional, relational. Like I'd been the one thread holding the whole tapestry together. And the moment I let go, everything unraveled. And not one of them knew how to stitch it back. Cody's tuition? Gone. Jade's rent support? Gone. Riley's safety net? Gone. And me? I was finally standing in the wreckage, not as a victim, but as a man who'd survived his own erasure. I don't miss the house. I don't miss the rhythm of silent dinners or the echo of footsteps that never moved toward me. I don't miss the weight of being needed but never embraced. What I do miss is the man I was at the start, the one who believed love was enough. I miss his hope, his naive faith that sacrifice could build something permanent, that showing up every day could earn him a seat at the table, that hard work and decency and consistency would be seen. But that man died somewhere between a canceled wedding venue and a cold sandwich reception. Somewhere between the words, "You're not our dad," and the day Heather didn't correct them. That man died, and I buried him with every refund receipt and deleted bank transfer. What lives now is someone harder, leaner, quieter. Someone who knows that giving without being seen doesn't make you noble. It makes you an accomplice in your own exploitation. Someone who knows that love without respect isn't family. It's slavery. You see, people think love is unconditional, but they forget respect isn't. And without respect, love is just a leash, tightening every time you try to breathe. So I cut it, and now I breathe freely. I still see them sometimes. Cody in town, Jade at the grocery store, Riley walking with Greg. They don't wave. They don't speak. Sometimes they look away. Sometimes they stare, like they're trying to remember who I was. I don't stop them. Let them remember me however they need to. But they'll never forget one thing. The moment I left, their foundation cracked. Because it wasn't built on love. It was built on me. They didn't lose a father. They lost a source. They lost the man who held it all together quietly for years. And when he walked away, the illusion of family crumbled. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I stopped funding the fantasy. So here's my question to you. If someone looked you in the eye after years of sacrifice and said, "You're not my real father," would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Kept serving? Would you have smiled through the disrespect and pretended it didn't cost you your dignity? Or would you have walked like I did? Would you have chosen silence over slavery? Because I did. And for the first time in years, I'm free.